it is ki jai. Welcome again to everyone who has joined the Sunday program. So before we begin our discussion on Bhagavad Gita, we'll recite these three invocation prayers which we see on the board, the last three lines. So we'll repeat, I'll recite and you'll repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Today we'll be reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is, our chapter 3, text number 13. So in my book it's page number 177. I think you can also see on the TV, it's on top. Right. Did everyone get the verse? I'll read first. Let's read each and every word, then we'll recite each and every sentence. Right, please repeat after me. Yajnashishta Ashina Santaha Muchyante Sarva Kilpishai Bhunjate Te Tu Agham Papa Ye Pachanti Atmakaranat. Now we'll recite the whole sentence. Yajnashishta Santo Muchyante Sarva Kilpishai Bhunjate Te Agham Papa Ye Pachantyatmakaranat. Yajnashishta Santo Muchyante Sarva Kilpishai Bhunjate Te Agham Papa Ye Pachantyatmakaranat. Yajnashishta Santo Muchyante Sarva Kilpishai Bhunjate Te Agham Papa Ye Pachantyatmakaranat. Anyone like to recite?
Yajnashishta Santo Muchyante Sarva Kilpishai
Muchyante Sarva Kilpishai
Bhunjate Te Agham Papa
Bhunjate Te Agham Papa
Ye Pachantyatmakaranat.
Ye Pachantyatmakaranat. Yajnashishta Santo Muchyante Sarva Kilpishai Bhunjate Te Agham Papa Ye Pachantyatmakaranat.
Yajnashishte Santo
Yajnashishta Santo
Muchyante Sarva Kilpishihi
Muchyante Sarva Kilpishai
Bhunjante Tvagama Papa
Bhunjate Te Agham Papa
Ye Pachante Atmakaranatah.
Ye Pachantyatmakaranat. Yajnashishta Santo Muchyante Sarva Kilpishai Bhunjate Te Agham Papa Ye Pachantyatmakaranat. please.
Yakyasistasina santo
Yajñasishtasina santo
Muchyante sarvakirtisai
muchyante sarvakilvishai
Muchyate te aham papa
bhunjate te tvaham papa
Ye pachantyatmakarana
ye pachantyatmakarana.
यज्ञशिष्टाशिनः सन्तो
Yajñasishtasina santo
मुच्यन्ते सर्वकिल्बिषैः
muchyante sarvakilvishai
मुञ्चते ते स्वगं पापा
bhunjate te tvaham papa
ये
ye
पचन्त्यात्मकारणाः
pachantyatmakarana. Right, we'll read the word translations now. Please repeat after me. Yajñashishta,
Yagyashishta,
a food taken from performance of sacred yajna.
food taken from the performance of yajna.
Ashinaha,
Ashinaha,
eaters.
eaters.
Santaha, the devotees. Muchyante, get relief. Sarva, all kinds of. Kilvishaihi, from sins. Bhunjante, enjoy. Te, they. Do, but. Agham, grievous sins. Papa, sinners. Ye, who. Pachanti, prepare food. Atmakaranat, for sense enjoyment. Translation and commentary by Scrivine Grace T.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. So please repeat after me. The devotees of the Lord are released of all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. I'll read it perfect now. Perfect. Srila Prabhupada. The devotees of the Supreme Lord are the persons who are in Krishna consciousness are called Santas, and they are always in love with their Lord as it is described in the Brahma Samhita 538. Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santas Sadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti. The Santas, being always in a compact of love with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, the giver of all pleasures, or Mukunda, the giver of liberation, or Krishna, the all-attractive person, cannot accept anything without first offering it to the Supreme Person. Therefore, such devotees always perform yajnas in different modes of devotional service, such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Archanam, etc. And these performances of yajna keep them always aloof from all kinds of contamination of sinful association in the material world. Others who prepare food for self or sense gratification are not only thieves, but also the eaters of all kinds of sins. How can a person be happy if he is both a thief and sinful? It is not possible. Therefore, in order for people to become happy in all respects, they must be taught to perform the easy process of Sankirtana Yajna in full Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, there can be no peace or happiness in the world. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashlakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nam Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Bhaktivedanta Swaminam Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharne Namaste Shunyavan Paschatya Vishadani Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Hare Krishna. thank you for coming along for today's Sunday program. This is the third time I'm saying the same thing, and that's fine. So today's discussion is going to be on the topic of how eating can lead one to the path of sinlessness. So my motivation for choosing this verse is the lecture which I gave last month actually. So last month I gave a lecture on how to curb one's restless mind, where we discussed from the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says that one can control one's restless mind by means of, does anyone remember? Okay, I think. So there are two things Krishna says. One is by practice and the other is by detachment. So these are the two things by which we can control our mind. So in the same purport, Srila Prabhupada says that to control one's mind, two things are very essential. Or one is, because this process of controlling mind is like a treatment to the mind. The mind is always restless and is always running after objects of sense gratification. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport that in order to control the mind, two things are very essential. One is the treatment, proper treatment to the mind, and the second is a proper diet. So Prabhupada says that in the end of the 36th verse, end of the purport to the 36th verse of the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So that was the lecture I gave. So I didn't cover much, because the lecture was a bit on, about practicing and about detachment. So, I didn't get a chance to speak much about diet, which the Prabhupada also mentions in the purport. So I thought today I'd focus on diet. And this verse is very much on that topic especially. So in that purport, the Prabhupada says that proper treatment of mind and diet are very essential to control one's mind. So what is that proper treatment? As the Prabhupada especially emphasizes as Shravanam, or hearing about Krishna. And proper diet is, Prabhupada says, taking Krishna Prasad, or food that is offered to Krishna. So in Krishna consciousness, if you see, if you just summarize Krishna consciousness and try to put it in 4 letters, devotees often give this example. Krishna consciousness is nothing but 4 alphabets actually. Does anyone know the 4 alphabets? Okay, I think now
C is chanting.
C is chanting. Okay,
A is association.
A is association.
A
Okay,
is book reading.
B.
Book reading Bhagavad Gita.
Okay, B, book reading. So A, B, C. We have covered 3 letters now. So that last one is remaining.
D dance.
D for dance. Oh, that's a good one.
Devotion.
Devotion. That's a good one.
Now.
Dham. But that's a Sanskrit word. It's not an English word. Diet. Yes. So all your answers are right, but we give more emphasis to diet. So if we summarize the whole Krishna consciousness, we can summarize it in 4 letters. A, B, C, D, which are the 4 letters of English alphabets. So A for association of devotees, which is very, very important for advancement in Krishna consciousness. And the second is reading of Srila Prabhupada's books. So book reading is very essential to keep ourselves enthusiastic in Krishna service. And C, which is chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And D is diet, what we take. So the diet which we take affects our mind very much. Whatever we eat, that is how our consciousness is made of. And the food stuff which we eat also affects our mind. For example, we see people who drink actually. They are out of mind when they're completely drunk, right? Their mind doesn't function. So that's like an immediate effect of food on mind. The food which we eat immediately affects the mind. But it's not just that intoxicants which directly affect the mind, but the food which we eat in general also affects our mind. Like we have food in different modes, like food in a mode of goodness, food in a mode of passion, and food in a mode of ignorance. And in Krishna consciousness, we also give a lot of emphasis that it's not just the food which we eat is pure, but it's also the person who cooks that food is also maintains proper consciousness. That's why we have certain rules and regulations for persons, who volunteer to cook for Krishna. They maintain proper standards of devotional life, like they should at least chant a minimum of 16 rounds and should be engaged in devotional life. So that why all these rules and regulations? Because proper consciousness is built, and with such a consciousness, if a person or a devotee cooks food, that consciousness goes to the food, and whoever takes that food, they gain that same consciousness. That's why diet plays a very important role in Krishna consciousness. So that's a brief introduction. So let's get back to this verse which we are discussing today. So here in this verse, Krishna says that the devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. So here in this verse, Krishna is giving much emphasis on an activity. So if you see the name of this chapter is called Karma Yoga. Karma means activity, right? And yoga means the process by which we link ourselves with God or Krishna. So here in this chapter, Krishna explains how by means of activity we can link ourselves to Krishna or God. So back if you see chapter 2, this is the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So if you see chapter 2 is called the contents of Gita summarized. So Srila Prabhupada used to say that contents of the Gita summarized is like a chapter where the whole summary of Gita Krishna just presents in one chapter. And in that same chapter, Krishna also describes that is an important verse which I quoted in my last lecture actually. Nasti buddhira yuktasya nacha yuktasya bhavana nacha bhavayata shantir ashantasya udasukham. Means one who is not linked to the Supreme will neither have transcendental intelligence. Two things. One who is not linked or connected to Krishna does not have two things, which are one is transcendental intelligence and the other is a steady mind. And Krishna further states that one who does not have transcendental intelligence and a steady mind, this person cannot be peaceful. And if we ever want to experience happiness in our life, the first thing which we need is peace of mind. Without a peace of mind, we cannot enjoy happiness. And peace of mind comes when there is steady mind and transcendental intelligence. So these things develop by linking ourselves to God or Krishna. So the process of linking ourselves to Krishna can be various. It can be by activity, it can be by yoga, it can be by devotional service, and so on. So from this chapter, Krishna explains that how by means of activity in devotional service, one can link oneself to Krishna. And by linking ourselves with Krishna by means of activity, what we'll get is transcendental knowledge, and the other is a steady mind. And with these two things, we can obtain peace, and with peace, we can enjoy happiness. So so here we are now learning about from the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, we are learning about activity, linking ourselves to Krishna. So, as I said before, in the second chapter where the whole Bhagavad Gita is condensed and Krishna is giving the whole knowledge of Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna in just one chapter, which is like too much in one sense, It's like, suppose you're hungry and, you take food, but if too much food is given to you at one go, it's like too much, you can't take everything in one go, right? And even if you take, it's difficult to digest. It's difficult for your body to digest. Or similarly, in the second chapter, Krishna gives so much knowledge to Arjuna that Arjuna was like confused. What should I do now? It's like you give so much knowledge in one go. So in the beginning of the third chapter, if you see, Arjuna states, no, I'm still confused, it's like you've explained everything. So what should I do now? So because you have explained the knowledge of self-realization, so should I leave the battlefield and go to the forest and just engage in self-realization, or shall I come and fight in this battle? So that's how this chapter begins actually. So actually Arjuna is not an ordinary human being like us, that he is bewildered by these silly things that he can't understand if Krishna gives all knowledge. No, he is an empowered soul. He has enough intelligence to understand whatever Krishna is speaking to him. But he asked this question on our behalf so that we do not have that intelligence to digest all this knowledge in one go. So on our behalf, Arjuna puts this question. So if you see even the whole Bhagavad Gita, it's actually for us. It's not meant for Arjuna. Arjuna is liberated soul. He was purposefully put in a situation of bewilderment by Krishna so that we get this knowledge of self-realization, of how we can engage in devotional service. So so if you see, when there are about 17 questions Arjuna asks, and that's for us actually. One of the reasons why Krishna appears in this material world is to re-establish the principles of religion, and to accomplish this service or this task to deliver the fallen living beings. Krishna used Arjuna as an instrument to impart this Vedic knowledge. And this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita is the essence of all the Vedic literatures. It's the essence of all the Upanishads and all the other Vedic scriptures. So that's why Arjuna posed this question, like you've explained everything in one go, I couldn't digest anything. So you tell me how. So Arjuna was in a situation where, like, okay, so now you explained to me about self-realization. Now I understand that I'm not this body, and I'm this person. So what should I do? Should I go to the forest and live a life of celibacy and perform religious activity, or should I stay here and engage in this castle fight? Then Krishna, in the beginning of this chapter, he explains that don't think that just by going to the forest you achieve perfection. And don't even think that just by staying in this battlefield you incur some sins. You need to act anyway. That's your dharma. So from this word, then Krishna starts explaining about activity, that just because you stay away from activity, that doesn't mean that you you free yourself from entanglement. No. Even if you act or you don't act, you will be entangled in this material world. So better than not acting is acting in Krishna consciousness. And then Krishna explains these verses where Krishna explains Arjuna how to act in Krishna consciousness, and that is the real meaning of Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga means acting in Krishna consciousness. That's the real meaning of Karma Yoga. So if you see the 9th verse of this chapter, Krishna tells Arjuna how to act in Krishna consciousness perfectly. So I'll just read out the translation of the 9th verse of the 3rd chapter, where Krishna says, "Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain free from bondage." So, work causes bondage, no doubt. If you act piously, you bind yourself by pious results. If you act impiously, you bind yourself by impious results. So, in any case, you're not free from bondage. But if you want to free yourself from bondage by means of working, that is, by acting for Vishnu, or in this context, it is explained as sacrifice or acting for yajna. So Krishna says, you act for Krishna. In that way, you become free from the reactions of actions. And if you see karma, Bhagavad Gita analyzes karma as in two ways actually. There are two types of karma. One is called akarma and the other is called vikarma. So these concepts will be explained later on in this chapter. So I'll just briefly go through this thing. Akarma, first we'll discuss vikarma. Vikarma means actions which are prohibited in Vedic literatures. This is called vikarma. And these actions, these actions, they bind us to this material world. So even pious activities, if we say, they bind us to this material world, because by doing pious activities we gain pious results by which we go to the heavenly planets. And as long as we have that piety, we enjoy in the heavenly kingdom. And as long as the piety is finished, then we come back again to this material world. That Krishna explains in the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So that's pious activities. So if you perform pious activities, you go to the heaven and you enjoy. Once your pious activities are finished, you come back again to this material world. So what happens if you perform impious activities? If you perform impious activities, then that's not different from performing sinful activities. You suffer in hell, and then once your suffering is finished, then again you take birth in one of the 8,400,000 species of life, and again at last you get this human body where you get chance to engage in Krishna consciousness again. And there's no guarantee that whether you'll get the same opportunity to perform Krishna consciousness or not. So that's vikarma, in the sense actions which bind us to this material world. And apart from vikarma, there is also akarma, means activities which free us from the bondage of this material world. So these are activities by performing which will be free from the material bondage. So these activities do not fall under the category of piety or impiety. They do not fall under the category of piousness or sinfulness. This is beyond pious sinful results, and which do not bind us to this material world. And Krishna consciousness is akarma, in the sense, probably people might think that, because we are chanting Hare Krishna, we are doing worship, we are accumulating a lot of pious results. This has nothing to do with piety. This is transcendental. This is transcendental to all piety and impiety. So there is Krishna consciousness, which frees us from all kinds of bondage. So Krishna explained that if we have to act, we need to act for Vishnu, and that action comes under the category of akarma. So here in this verse, Krishna is giving an example of what kind of activity. For example, in this verse Krishna says eating. Let's consider one activity. So Krishna says devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment already eat sin. So we are discussing about activity, right? So eating is an activity. So how eating can free us from the bondage of this material world, and the same activity, eating which can bind us to this material world, Krishna explains in this verse. See, you cannot avoid eating. No, that is not possible. But you can eat in such a way that you free yourself from the sins. Not just sins, but also pious, but you can go beyond pious sins and pious results. And that is by offering first to sacrifice, or in other words, offering to Krishna. So if we eat foodstuff which is not offered to Krishna, and Krishna says that we are verily eating only sin. In the sense that this very activity of eating is binding us to this material world. It's giving a reaction, it's giving a sinful reaction which binds us to this material world. So that's how we came to this verse, the 13th verse. If you all are following, we discussed that what Krishna is explaining in this chapter, and the importance of activity, how one should act, and here Krishna is giving an example of acting in such a way that we do not bind ourselves to this material world. So now let's discuss this verse. So if we see the purport, Srila Prabhupada first gives importance to devotees actually. Why? Because Krishna uses the word santaha. in this verse. Santa means saintly persons or devotees of the Lord who are engaged in Krishna consciousness. And Srila Prabhupada quotes a beautiful verse from Brahma Samhita which states, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadeva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Shyama Sundaram Achintya Gunasvarupam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So this is the 38th verse of the 5th chapter of Sri Brahma Samhita, where Lord Brahma Samhita is like prayers offered by Lord Brahma to Lord Krishna. So this is Brahma glorifying Lord Krishna by seeing Lord Krishna. It's not just he's imagining the form of Krishna and glorifying. No, he's practically seeing the form of Krishna and he's glorifying. So here in this, and these are a series of verses, about I think 30 to 35 verses of Brahma Samhita. So here this verse is very beautiful actually, which is one of the verses, which is the 38th verse of Brahma Samhita, where Lord Brahma says, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena. So Lord Brahma states that those whose eyes are ointed with the love of Krishna, they see Krishna always in their heart. No? And what form of Krishna do they see in their heart? Yam Shyama Sundaram Achintya Gunasvarupam. They see the form of Krishna as Shyama Sundaram. Shyama Sundaram means Krishna. It's like the form of Krishna which we see on the altar, you know, it's like black complexion, which is called Shyama Sundaram. So this is the form of Krishna which pure devotees whose eyes are ointed with love see. And not that they see just once a day or twice a day or once a week or once a month or once a year or once in 10 years or something like that. They see the form of Krishna as Shyamsundar in their heart always. It's not just one moment or 1 second, you know. They see this form. Sometimes, you know, devotees, they give this example that, you know, pure devotees of the Lord, they always see TV in their heart, you know. They always see the form of Krishna in their heart, so that's like sense enjoyment for devotees. That's actually the real sense enjoyment for the eyes and the heart. So that Krishna says, so who see Krishna in their heart? It's these santas or these devotees whose eyes are ointed with love. And that in that verse, Lord Brahma also uses the word santa sadeva hridayeshu vilokayanti. In the sense, these santas or saintly persons, devotees, they see Krishna in their heart always. So Srila Prabhupada in the purport states that the santas being always in a compact of love with Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, Krishna or Mukunda, cannot accept anything first, offering it to Supreme Person. So we know who are devotees. Devotees are those whose eyes are ointed with love for Krishna. And what do these devotees do and what do these devotees don't do? That's the Prabhupada explains. First, the Prabhupada explains what the devotees don't do. And that the Prabhupada quotes this verse. You know, that devotees, first of all, they do not take anything that is not offered to Krishna. That is the first thing they do not do. They only take things which are offered to Krishna. And then the second thing, what do the devotees do? They engage in yajna or sankirtan yajna. So if we further read the purport, the Prabhupada says, therefore such devotees always perform yajnas in different modes of devotional service, such as shravanam, kirtanam, smaranam, archanam, etc. And these performances of yajnas keep them always aloof from all kinds of contamination of sinful act association in the material world. So now we discussed that devotees, what they don't do, they do not take anything that is first not offered to Krishna. So what do? They engage themselves in yajna or the performance of sacrifice. So does it mean that devotees every morning come together, lit a fire in this temple room and perform sacrifice? No, right? Then has anyone seen, at least in Newcastle temple, anyone performing sacrifices every day in temple? No, right? No. Then, so we are not doing any sacrifice then, right? So we are not devotees, right? That makes sense, right? You know, sacrifice means fire should be there, ghee should be there, and that is called sacrifice. If there is no fire, no ghee, there is no sacrifice happening, and what are we doing then? Okay. Krishna says those sacrifice, devotees do sacrifice, and we are not doing sacrifice. So these fire sacrifices and all these things, these are meant for people of other yugas. For them, these sacrifices are meant for. In Kali Yuga, people are so unfortunate and so fallen that they cannot perform sacrifices. In the Vedic literature, it is said that every yuga has a yuga dharma. So we have 4 yugas, and in the Vedic scriptures we get a beautiful verse called Krite yodhyaito Vishnu tretaya yajnado makai dvapare paricharyayam kalotad harikirtan. So there are 4 yugas: Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga, right? So, and each yuga have yuga dharmas, in the sense the process by which one can attain Krishna. So, if you see Satya Yuga, the yuga dharma is dhyana, in the sense meditation. And because the lifetime of people were like so long, they could live for millions of years, they can sit on meditation for thousands of years without eating and drinking anything. Just imagine ourselves, we can't even be without eating for a couple of hours. I think people like snacking around, something or the other. So how can we restrain ourselves from eating and drinking? We cannot even restrain ourselves from eating and drinking for a few hours or even days. What to speak of eating for years, and that too not tens and twenties, but hundreds and thousands of years, which is not at all possible, because first of all our lifespan is only so less that we can't even live for hundreds and thousands of years, right? So the first process is out of our list now. We cannot meditate. Let's come to the second yuga, which is Treta Yuga. What's the yuga dharma of the Treta Yuga? Fire sacrifice. So we are not doing any fire sacrifice in ISKCON Newcastle temple, at least. So why fire sacrifice is not recommended in this age? Any guesses?
You are Brahmins who can recite that.
Yeah, we do not have any qualified Brahmanas who can light fire just by the means of chanting mantras, right? That's one reason. Another?
Global warming.
Global warming, nice, yeah. Environmental issues, climate change. Okay, that's one reason. Okay, any other?
Also for fire sacrifice we need pure things like pure ghee.
Yeah, so
Not possible.
which is not possible. Yes, we do not get pure ghee, pure ingredients. That's one thing. Any other reasons? One reason I can give is, it is said in the Vedic days that the fire sacrifice were not so small that you just put them in suppose like 3 bricks on each side. The size of the sacrifice fire would be like so big that probably it covers a lot of kilometers, actually, not just meters but kilometers, in a sense, so big. And Brahmanas used to sit on each side, and they used to have other Brahmanas helping them. So this is like a huge investment, First of all, you don't even have space to arrange such a big sacrificial fire, So this fire sacrifice is also out of the list for us. So what's the third yuga? Dwapara Yuga. So what's the yuga dharma? Deity worship. So we are worshipping deity, right? So what's wrong in it?
178.
But it is said that the standards of deity worship in the other yugas are like very high class, Even like we were discussing, that we do not even have proper ingredients, Whatever worship we are doing, it's like just touching some basic standard, but it's not the high class standards. So in Bhagavad Yuga, high class worship of the Lord used to go on, It's just like using first class ingredients, First class everything punctual, on time, and this way high class worship. And by this way, they could reach the Supreme Lord. But in Kali Yuga, we scrapped meditation, which is not possible. fire sacrifice, not possible. Deity worship, not possible. So, what's the solution for the people in Kali Yuga that they can also achieve perfection? That is Harinam Sankirtan. Yeah. So, Kalautak Hari Kirtanam. So, in Kali Yuga, the only Yuga Dharma is Hari Kirtan, in the sense engaging congregational chanting and dancing, as our Dharam Prabhu was saying, deep for dancing. So, in Kali Yuga, the only means of liberation is by chanting and dancing of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So, that's why for us, Yajna means Sankirtan Yajna. And we have Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who inaugurated this Sankirtan moment. So, in the Bhagavatam, we get a beautiful verse where the prediction of the appearance of Lord Chaitanya has been described. So it comes in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Do you still have that verse, Rohit?
I can bring it up.
Yeah, I think it was in my laptop. So I can recite the verse actually. Probably he can put it on the TV. So it's from the 11th chapter, 5th chapter. I don't remember the verse number. So the way Srimad Bhagavatam, which was written 5,000 years ago, has already predicted the appearance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whom you see here on the altar. So they said that Krishna Varnam, Vishya Krishnam, Sango Pangastra Parshadam, Yajnai Sankirtana Praya, Yajantihi Sumedhasaha. So in this age of Kali Yuga, Krishna appears. Can you put on the translation group? Can one of you volunteer to read the translation? Anyone?
In the age of Kali, intelligent persons perform congregational chanting to worship the incarnation of Godhead.
Yeah.
Who constantly sings the name of Krishna, although his complexion is not blackish, he is Krishna himself. He is accompanied by his associates, servants, weapons, and confidential companions.
Yes. So this verse is referring to none other than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So here, the appearance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has been predicted in Srimad Bhagavatam, where Srimad Bhagavatam describes the Krishna Varnam, Krishna Krishnam. So Krishna appears in Kali Yuga as well, but this time it's not in his original form or his Shyam Sundar form where we see him as black or bluish color. This time in Kali Yuga, Krishna appears in a golden complexion. So that's why it's called Vishal Krishna, in the sense he's Krishna himself, but he's not in his original color. He's coming in a different color. What color is it? It's called golden color. And he's coming with all his associates, Sango, Pangastra, Parshadam. He's coming with his associates and also his weapons. So, why is he coming? Because he is coming to inaugurate this Sankirtana Yajna, which is called Yajna Sankirtana Praya Yajantihi Sumedhasaha. So, the main reason why he is coming or is appearing in this age of Kali Yuga is to inaugurate this Sankirtan movement, which is the Yajna of the people in Kali Yuga. And who participate in this Yajna is Yajantihi Sumedhasaha. It's not ordinary people in general who take part in this Sankirtan Yajna. It's Sumedhasaha, those who are highly intelligent, they take part in this Sankirtan Yajna, and which is the Yoga Dharma of this Kali Yuga. So that's how, so for us, people in Kali Yuga, the Yajna is Sankirtan Yajna. And actually we are running out of time. So what have we discussed? So we were discussing about Santa. Santa means saintly persons, right? So we discussed what do they do and what do they don't do. So what they do Sankirtan Yajna. And what they don't do is they do not accept anything that is not offered to Krishna first. But if you see quite opposite the word Santa, we get those people who are not devoted to Krishna. So what do? We can take the first point, like the devotees, they only eat what is offered to Krishna. But these non-devotees who are opposite to Santa, they take everything that is not offered to Krishna. And in that way, what happens is they just accumulate sins. And now they are accumulating sins. So how can they be peaceful? You know. So coming back to the beginning, okay, and I'll just summarize now because we're running out of time. So we discussed that in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explained that those who are not linked to him by means of those who are not linked to him, they do not have two things. And anyone remembers? Transcendental intelligence and steady mind, right? And without which, there cannot be any peace, and without peace, there cannot be any happiness. So by sinful activities, what happens is you are bound, So we have been discussing that we should act in such a way that which frees us from bondage. That sinful activities bind us to this material world. So, okay, this is coming back to the point. So, sinful activities bind us. So these are actions which are binding us to this material world, right? So the process which binds us to this material world cannot give us happiness or peace. So if you just listen to these words, so Krishna says that those who are linked to him, those who are not linked to him do not have steady intelligence and a transcendental intelligence and steady mind. So we discussed that the process of linking begins with karma, action, right? So action should be performed in such a way that it frees us from the bondage of the material world. If that action binds us to this material world, then what happens is there cannot be any happiness and peace. So with that, I end today's lecture. So I started with diet, but anyway, we got drifted away to different subject matters. So if there are any questions, they are welcome. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
I got one question. So
Yes,
you
please.
mentioned about deity worship in Dwapara.
Yeah.
Could you please elaborate more?
Elaborate more. Yeah. So, in Bhagavad Gita, deity worship is performed in a very high standard way. It's like suppose I gave the example, like the ingredients which they used, they were like completely pure, and even the standard was also really high, which is impossible. For example, one of the important aspects of deity worship is cleanliness. So, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so I got it. So any example from Mahabharata if you can give?
Well, Mahabharata happened in Dwapara Yuga, So, no direct examples, I would say.
I have an example.
Okay.
Prabhu, generally you might have heard, Purohits or some Pujari say, Suvarna Pushpam Samarpayami. Now, Suvarna Pushpa means golden flowers. So practically we are not offering golden flowers, isn't it? So that standard we have reduced to the natural flowers.
Okay, that's a good one. Yeah, and another aspect is cleanliness actually. In Kali Yuga, we cannot be 100% clean, It's like, although we take a shower, but the standards of cleanliness for deity worship are like really high, Suppose, we try to make sure that everything is clean, we have perfectly taken shower, and we have wore clean clothes. Suddenly a fly comes and sits on us, We never know where the fly sat before. So as soon as the fly touches our body becomes contaminated as well. So without cleanliness, no. We can do deity worship, but to the standard which was performed in Dwapara Yuga is like, there cannot be any comparison. That's why, and actually deity worship requires a lot of patience as well. So it's not just, you go and offer something and do your job. It requires a lot of patience, requires a lot of dedication, which is very, very difficult for the people in Kali Yuga. It's not completely impossible, can be possible, may be possible, but not very easy. And people in this age are very fallen, They want the quickest solutions, They do not want any lengthy procedures. So the quickest, easiest process by means of achieving the perfection of life is chanting Hare Krishna. Chanting Hare Krishna, no rules and regulations. Anyone, at any time of the day, you can chant Hare Krishna. No fast rules for chanting Hare Krishna. That's why it's called Yoga Dharma. The easiest, even if you're a fallen or the most fallen person, still you can chant Hare Krishna. There's no escape from it, That's why that's the easiest process recommended in this age. So I hope that answers your question. Any more questions or?
So there was in between there was a question about the mind's functioning.
Yeah.
And there was some talk about intellect. So how does exactly that function?
Mind and intelligence.
Yeah, intellect. What is the role of intellect in the mind functioning?
Well, if you speak of intelligence and mind, they are two separate beings. So, from Bhagavad Gita, actually from the same chapter, we learn. Actually, I discussed this last time in my last lecture. About the whole lecture was about mind actually. So, if we say what is mind, Krishna explains in the same chapter later on actually. If we analyze our own body, we have 5 gross senses and 3 subtle elements. So Krishna says in this verse, in this chapter, Indriyani paranyahur indriyejo param manaha manasastu paro buddhir yo buddhe paradastu saha. So if you say the whole body, the body is made of earth, water, fire, air and ether, which are like the 5 gross elements of material nature. So the whole body is made up of these things. But about this mind, this body, if there is something that is mind, which is not an external object, which is something which very subtle. That's why it falls under the category of subtle elements in the body. And if we understood that beyond this body there is this mind, but if there is something which is beyond the mind, then that is intelligence. And if there is something which is beyond the intelligence, that is soul. So sometimes even if our mind, wanders here and there, we sometimes force our mind to remain steady. That is intelligence actually. By means of intelligence, we are controlling the mind. So mind is like a restless child, You need a parent to control the restless child. And in this case, the parent is like the intelligence, which pulls the mind again back to senses. So that's how mind and intelligence are related. Mind processes thoughts, but it's not intelligence. Intelligence controls the mind. It's above mind. Yeah, hope that answers your question. Yeah.
And you can read 6th chapter. If you read the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it's all about mind. So you can familiarize yourself a little bit more with the teaches about it. Good challenge. Read it before you come next time to the temple.
Any more questions? Or can move on to the next part of the program? So you have one question.
Sometimes it's not possible, like, I will give my example when I was coming from India.
Yeah.
So I cannot get immediately after coming here prasad, and I cannot bring prasad for maybe 10 or 15 days. So in that case, only option which I have is to eat outside, because
Yeah.
I cannot survive on fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
So while eating that, what should be our consciousness, or what we can do to reduce the amount of sin which we accumulate?
Yeah. So if in case we are in a situation where eating outside food is inevitable, where we do not have any alternatives, then we at least stick to the standards that we do not eat non-vegetarian food or eat food which contains onion and garlic. That's like the minimum standard which we maintain. And apart from that, if we can find food which meets these requirements, we can offer this food to Krishna in our mind. That we can just pray that Krishna, in the circumstances in which I am, I couldn't get proper food. So in such a situation, I'm accepting whatever I'm getting. So in that way, you can just pray to Krishna in your mind and offer it, and that's not different from offering to Krishna. Because whatever you got, you're offering to Krishna in your mind, and you're taking it as prasadam. So with Krishna's prasadam means mercy of Krishna, right? So whatever you got by the mercy of Krishna, you offer it to Krishna and you can take it. That's fine. In such exceptional situations. But in general, most of us, who at least cook daily, we have the opportunity to cook and offer it to Krishna. So we should never take a step back and not refrain ourselves from offering food to Krishna. We should always offer food to Krishna.
I have one thing. I'm not very sure. There is one slogan Lord says, Sarvadharmam Parityaja.
Yeah.
So maybe that can answer your question. Whatever, he is the Supreme.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, in one sense, from one perspective, yeah, just whatever you got, but at least you have something in your mind, right? So whatever you got, just accept it, and Mamekam Sharanam Braja, in the sense you're surrendering to Krishna, right? So you're offering that food to Krishna. So that's Krishna consciousness. So I think probably we'll end up here because we are already 5 minutes over time. So thank you everyone, and Hare Krishna. Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is ki Jai. Shri Prabhupada ki Jai.
His grace Vasu Shresh Prabhu ki
Jai.